Welcome to ISIFE EDUBLOG, where you know us to bring you the best in academics. Today on the English language, your guide, Martin Epa, will be bringing you the topic, Summary. Summary. Now, summary is perhaps one of the most neglected topics. Usually it becomes a serious matter when we get to the examination classes in SS3. But we should be looking at summary as something we do every day, because that's what it is. Summary is the life wire of the usage of the English language. You know why I say so? Of course, you will get a whole dosage of reasons why this is so. But first, you see, of what use is reading if one cannot interpret what they have read? Perhaps it is the reason why religious leaders mislead us. Perhaps it is the reason why many teachers are yet to pass the message, intended message, to their students. I say so because if I have read a text and fully understood it, I will not just interpret that text. I will also infuse other ideas that are important, even beyond the content of that passage. This is not what the examiner wants you to do, but I'm talking of general knowledge now. If I read something and I understood it, I should begin to look at how what I've read is in my own life. What are the connections? But where I did not understand it, such connections cannot be made. Such deductions cannot be made. So it is at that level, at that point, where you're able to interpret what you have read, that you can talk of summarizing it. Look at our note here. A summary is the abridged version of a full text. The abridged version of a full text. The version that has been cut short. But having cut it short, it does not mean that the meanings of the original text or the full text will be lost. You see, there are novels that are 700, 800 pages. And some people could approach the author. If you leave this novel at this level, not too many young readers would want to identify with it. And so the author may give such an approval for somebody else to go through the entire work and pick the points made. So this novel of 700 pages could be reduced to as little as 200 pages or even less. You see, cutting out entire 500 pages to give you 200 pages. That's the abridged version. And you'll be surprised, it will be amazing to see the person who has read a copy of that novel of 200 pages tell the same story that the reader who had read the full version would tell you, because the writer of the abridged version had collected all the vital points from the main text. You know, it is not in any way to discourage you from reading full texts. It is a way of telling you that you can reduce the message, yet retain the meaning. Now, that's what the second sentence tries to say. It is a shortened version of a passage, a novel, etc., which retains all the important points in the full text. Which retains all the important points in the full text. No important meaning should be left out in writing a summary, because if you do, then you will be presenting something short of what the original writer intended to pass. Writing a summary requires a number of skills. Alright? When we talk of skills in language studies, one may think, what is this skill we're talking about? Now, you're listening to me speak. I have acquired a number of skills to enable me to speak the way I do. The skills in writing summary include 1. Reading. Now, the first skill says, one must be a good reader. One must be a good reader. What does it mean to be a good reader? A good reader is not just a person who can identify written words and call them out. No, that's not just a good reader. Let's look at it. If you have an 8-year-old sibling, or if you can recall when you were younger, you notice that if given a text, the 9-year-old could read at a great speed. But when they are done reading, just ask them to tell you anything they understood from what they have read. They'll be looking at you. This particular problem continues until about SS1 or SS2. Yes. I am a teacher, and I know what I get, the responses I get when I ask a child in SS2 who had just read a passage to briefly tell us what they understood. Suddenly, this beautiful reader will begin to scratch their eye. And then some of them would mutter a word or two and give up. There are just quite few who could tell you what they've read, even in sparse words. So that's a level of reading. A level of reading where you can, like the butterfly, perch on the words, but without assimilating them. Like I said, a religious leader, a preacher, should be able to understand the Bible or whatever holy book they use. Because most of the holy books I know were written in what I may describe as esoteric language. So if you're not able to understand what you've read, it will be difficult for you to preach to others. We said, yes, a good reader should also be a person who can communicate the meaning of the writing to an audience. That is, if you are reading, somebody does not need to have a copy of what you're reading to understand it. A good reader should be reading and others making sense out of what is being read. I have a good reader in one of the groups I belong to. When she's reading, actually a lady, when she's reading, I do not need to open my own book. We study together. Alright? When she is reading, I do not need, all I need to do is listen, because she will communicate the ideas in that writing to me without necessarily needing me to open my own book. That's a good reader. But remember, we're talking of an audience understanding you now. What of the second, which is you reading and getting to understand what you have read? These are two different things now. First, I talked about reading and communicating ideas to an audience. Now I'm talking about reading and communicating the ideas in the text you're reading to yourself. That is the point. You have to get to that level where after reading, somebody asks you, okay, so can you summarize what you have read? And you quickly pick up the points and relate to this person because you have understood it. Yes, I have something here. Most average readers, usually in SS1 and 2, cannot tell you the content of the material they have just read. Yet, if you narrate the text to them and you make a mistake, they will raise their hand to correct you. Alright? This person has read and has stored the reading in them, but they are not able to pass it. That is, to tell you the story. Let's say they have read a novel. And he asks, have you read Things Fall Apart? They say, oh, I read Things Fall Apart. I've read it. I just finished rereading it a few days back. So can you tell us the story? Summarize the story to us. That becomes a problem. They will remember the name Okonkwo. They will remember all the characters. But they can hardly put the story together in a manner that will summarize it to another person. That is because they have not acquired the skill of interpretation. There was a company that was in Nigeria some years ago called Etisala, and that company has become 9 Mobile today. Now, Etisala had this advert, and there's this slogan that now you're talking. Yes, that's the slogan. Now you're talking. This advert was given to somebody to interpret in Igbo, that is to produce the Igbo version of the advert. A beautiful advert was rendered, but in interpreting this slogan, I laughed. And each time I listened to that advert on radio, it would elicit some kind of laughter on my part. Now, the Igbo guy who interpreted this did what we call transliteration. Transliteration, that is interpreting the words written, not interpreting the meaning. If you're given something to read, you are expected to interpret the meaning, except for educational purposes where you're told to transliterate. Fine. But what is mainly expected of a reader to do is to give the meaning in their own language of the same language or in another language, in which case the audience do not understand the language with which the material was written. Now, this person will say, Ubua kimalitere okwu, and I will laugh. Well, that is now. Now is Ubua. You are talking. Ubua kimalitere okwu. But that's not the meaning. That's what I'm trying to say. That's not the meaning of now you're talking in Igbo. In Igbo, now you're talking means kita kebia. That's how the Igbo man would have put now you're talking. Naturally. So it was expected that this person should understand this thing and use the Igbo language to say it. Not to say it using English words. Now you're talking is English words spoken in Igbo. Now, I usually tell people, if you may speak pure Igbo using English words, just as this person has spoken English using Igbo words, the person who said, Ubua kimalitere okwu only spoke English using Igbo words. Let me tell you what I mean. Look at these three words. Ki, moto dadi. Ki, moto dadi. Is this English or Igbo? Yes, the words are English. Ki, moto, and daddy are all English words. But then, this is daddy's car key. Alright? The English version of this statement is daddy's car key. What you have on the board is purely Igbo language using English words. So if somebody says, Nyem ki moto daddy, this does not have anything to do with English language. The words might be English, but the structure is entirely Igbo. And languages are structurally based things. Alright? The language of a people is its structure. If not, there are so many words that overlap. The French language and the English language have a number of words in common. Yet, the fact that you understand English does not ever mean that you will understand French. Yet, in writing, you see a good number of words you know in English. Maybe one or two spelling differences, but the words are there. Yet, this does not mean you will understand French because you speak English. So, why is it so? The structure of the French language is a little bit different from the structure of the Igbo language, English language. Now, Yoruba and Igbo have a lot of words in common. Yoruba and Igbo have many words in common. Igbo and Idoma languages have a number of words in common. Yet, you need a structure to understand these languages. So, we have summarized these ideas. First, you read. Second, you understand. And third, you interpret. Interpretation helps you to relate what you have read to another person using your own words. That's what interpretation does. Interpretation helps you to apply the ideas you got from what you have read. That's another thing. Except you have, downloaded, so to speak, what you've read. Except you have internalized what you've read, you cannot apply the knowledge. It is not debatable that you will make use of what you've read when you have not understood and internalized it. Now, if you can interpret, then you can summarize what you have read, bringing out the theme of the writing, leaving out the unnecessary details. That's the truth. I've come to this level. If you can interpret, then you can tell somebody else what you have read using your own words. Because you base your story now on the main points and not on the unnecessary details which the writer may have brought up to enrich, beautify, and perhaps to lengthen the story. Now, I shall be looking at the nature of the WAEC and NECO Summary questions, because that's our focal point. This lesson will be broken into two. The second part will give you tips on summary writing. We have defined summary. We have given you the skills you require to write a summary. And we'll be looking at the nature of the WAEC and NECO summary tests. Then, the third part of the lesson shall look at the tips. Now, how do these examination bodies set their questions? WAEC and NECO will give you an estimated 450 words passage. A passage of about 450 words. You'll be asked to read, after which you are asked to summarize. Now, what I would say, in 6 sentences, one for each. In 6 sentences, one for each. They may break the sentence into 2 or 3, the question into 2 or 3 parts, depending on the content of the passage. If the passage has 2 divisions, maybe the first part is on how to do something, and the second part is the benefit of doing that same thing. Then the first part of the question may say, in 3 sentences, one for each, summarize how to plant corn. Summarize how to plant maize. And so the first 3 sentences of the summary will work on how to plant maize or corn. Then the second part will say, in 3 sentences, one for each, summarize the benefit of maize stated in the passage. So again, you find 6 sentences. It could also be 5 sentences, especially when you have the points just based on one area, or say the passage is basically one straight passage that is not divided like we saw in the first case. Now, if you're told to summarize in 5 sentences. Summary carries 30 marks. The implication is that each of these 5 sentences will carry 6 marks. So you see, it is actually a harvest of marks. Make 1 sentence and grab 6 marks. Now, if you're told to summarize the passage in 6 sentences, it means that each of these 6 sentences carries 5 marks. Yes, 5 times 6 is 30, if I'm not mistaken. So, each of the 6 sentences you make guarantees you 5 marks. You see, some of the objective questions carry as little as 1 mark. But a sentence in your summary gives you either 5 or 6 points. So you do not need to joke with this. And you know, you could grab as much as the 30 marks at stake. It is possible to score 30 over 30. So why not take the chance? Learn how to write it and grab all the marks. Because honestly, it is, well, some things are easy, but are the most difficult. Summary is the easiest way to get marks in the English test. The test comes in, we talked about it the other in our letter writing lesson. You have the essay, where you have 5 questions to answer 1. So you pick 1 from that. Then you have the comprehension. Then you have the summary. Then you have the objective questions. In all of this, the easiest place to grab marks is in the summary. I tell you that. Yet, it is still the most difficult part of the English language to a whole lot of people. Then, if you have this, how do you harvest these 5 or 6 marks from each sentence? That is the issue. That is the issue. We're looking at the tips that will help you to harvest these marks in the next video you watch. Remember, don't lose the important messages of the write-up when you are giving your summary. Before I leave you, make sure that your summary is not bigger than the passage you're summarizing. I've seen that quite a couple of times in WAEC and NECO halls. You look at the summary somebody has written, because it's an examination hall. You don't have to tell anybody anything, but you look at this summary and you are sure that this person has lost the entire marks, because you look at the passage and look at the summary. The summary the exam candidate has written is more than a page, and you're wondering, 6 sentences that should not take 12 lines becoming more than a page? That's no longer summary, you know. So keep it as short as possible. The tips on summary writing will come your way next. Keep subscribing, keep sharing, and keep liking our videos. We will always be here for you. Thank you.